welcome back to Beyond the Veil Tarot and Astrology. My name is Candice Marie. Thanks for joining me. Today is going to be another one of my astro musing videos. I have lots of cool information about the Venus-Uranus conjunction transit, what it means, how it's going to be affecting everyone. This is going to be more... Obviously, you're going to get my predictions as you usually do with my videos, but this is going to be more kind of looking at more of like the philosophical side of this transit and what it really means and how we're going to be experiencing this physically, spiritually. You know, the list goes on. So if you're new to my channel, welcome. I am a Western and evolutionary astrologer with an emphasis on incorporating the art of clairvoyant and tarot readings into my lectures and also into my practice, my one-on-one sessions. Yeah, please do consider subscribing and being aware of when I'm coming out with new content. We've seen the channel grow so much over the last year, and we have so many new people who are interacting on the channel, who are joining memberships and some of the live readings. So thank you guys so much for your support. I appreciate it. This is probably one of my favorite things to kind of talk about. And I think the reason why is because the Venus-Uranus conjunction can sometimes get a bad rap. So I want to kind of talk about a couple different angles and how this may manifest. Now, those of you guys who are not aware, maybe I'm sure you felt it. How can you not feel that shift of in the last week or two having Venus enter into the sign of Taurus and leaving Aries? It was definitely a little bit more relaxed, a little bit more comfortable. Obviously, Venus is at home in the sign of Taurus, which is a fixed earth sign. Taurus deals with everything from fertility to comfort to our creature comforts, our senses, what tastes good, feels good, money in hand, money in the bank, the earth between our toes or our hands when we're gardening, all of that stuff. So definitely having Venus being in this sign has been a nice kind of reprieve. I talked in my video for the monthly that Venus would undergo a series of like obstacles throughout the transit that she was going to have in Taurus, and that it was going to be rather unusual, both because of the conjunctions to Uranus, but also the North Node and then the square to Saturn. And I realized that just telling you guys this can sometimes be a little like, okay, like where's the visual? So I actually wanted to create a little bit of a flow chart so you guys have a better understanding. I'm going to pull this up. I'm going to look at it as I'm talking to you so you have a better understanding of what's going on here, because it's not just Venus conjunct Uranus, which we'll talk about. It's also going to be Venus touching on the North Node in this realignment with where we are going with our values, with our beauty, with our money, right? And then days later, we're going to see Venus move into a square with Saturn. So it's kind of like, oh, shocking. All right, I'm adjusting. Oh, this is a difficult adjustment. And I'll give you guys a little bit of insight how it's been playing out for me as well. Because sometimes I guess I get a lot of emails and a lot of comments and messages from people who are like, hey, thanks for sharing your personal experience, because number one, it's like, I'm a human just like you guys. I'm going through the motions just like you guys. But it can be really helpful so other people can kind of be like, okay, I'm feeling the same way. Or if you happen to have these natal placements, so if you have a natal Venus conjunct Uranus, these discussions can be really helpful because you get more understanding and information as to how this plays out for you on a day-to-day basis, right? Because the natal chart is kind of like an imprint of what you typically have, on your day-to-day, because that's what you were born with. So this is my little, it's going to pop up. We're going to edit so you can see it. This is my my flow chart that I have for you guys that's just going to kind of give you a feeling of the events and the dates, and I'll break it down date by date, but essentially this is going to be quite active here from June 11th all the way through July 13th. Now that's kind of like the release point when we see Venus eventually move into the sign of Gemini and trine Saturn. We'll see things kind of stabilize. But specifically June 11th through about the 20th, that's when we're going to see the sequence of these transits in general. So I'm excited to talk to you guys about this. I'll leave this up on the screen just so you guys have a better understanding of what I'm talking about. So we're going to break it down transit by transit, and I'm going to give you guys some insight on that. I've got some stuff I'm going to use today. I'm going to be reading from the archetypal universe. I'm going to be reading you guys the Sabian symbol of the Venus-Uranus conjunction. I'm also going to be pulling a couple excerpts and things that I have gotten offline, and then I'm going to be talking to you about how it's going to affect each and every one of the 12 signs. So let's go ahead and get started first with, Venus in conjunction to Uranus. So this conjunction is going to be happening June 11th through the 12th, although you might start feeling it sooner. That is when the conjunction is going to happen. So when we take the themes of Venus in general, which is about socializing, relationships, money, love, all that stuff, when it fuses with that conjunction to Uranus, which is quite rebellious, right? It goes its own way. We see liberation, right? We see freedom and being released in some way. So there can be really loud things going on in the background in regards to our relationships. And people can act very rebelliously during these transits. People can suddenly go, that's it, I need a break. I need some space from my partner for a week. Or there can be sudden breakings, bends and breaks is what we see with Saturn and Uranus aspects. So the bending, I think, is going to be the Venus-Uranus, and then the breaking will actually be the square to Saturn. Now, it's not necessarily like a bad aspect per se. Certainly, we see people who do have makeups and breakups, but we also see a lot of good things. We see really interesting displays of music or art or self-expression, wild, loud pops of colors, very unique and futuristic almost, things that are redefining what we find beautiful, right? In this case, I think of Taurus as like what's natural. And I've been sitting on this a lot. Like this is something that I've been like racking my brain, really thinking about, being like, what does it mean? What does it mean to be beautiful? What does it mean to get back to basics? What does it mean to have something that's natural, right? And natural beauty, which is something we don't see a lot of. We're seeing, at least culturally, like a ton of filters, and that's more Neptune, but we're definitely seeing a lot of our perspective of beauty being influenced by, obviously, what we're seeing on social media, and I think that's a lot of the Venus, Uranus stuff. I also feel like it's, in some way, Venus-Uranus aspects can also kind of distort something that should be beautiful or something that should be natural. So I think that there is some kind of distortion going on throughout this transit of what we find beautiful in general. So this can just be some wild new beauty trends, that are kind of coming up. People doing things that are very unnatural to get a much more natural appearance or a much more natural kind of look. I think that we're going to see possibly some really just interesting new styles that come from this, basically, some interesting new trends. And even though it's a short transit, it's quite impactful because it's also going to, Venus is then going to move on from its conjunction to Uranus, and it's going to come into conjunction with the North Node. So for the most part, I feel like the 11th and the 12th is, liberation of personal values, breaking free, new taste, new style, new pleasure. So if you want to go and get the weird, wacky haircut, if you want to go and decide that you want to pierce your nose, I've seen a lot of Venus, Uranus aspects, especially in Taurus, has been people who have I'm going to get dreadlocks, or, I'm going to shave my head and I'm going to pierce my septum type stuff. Very kind of natural, wanting to have things that are natural. And that's what I really admire about Taurus placements, being somebody I'm a Libra rising. So I feel like where Venus in Libra differs, or Libra placements differ from Taurus, is that Taurus is like, you don't need all the bells and whistles. It's just beautiful. Just let it be the way that it is. The natural hair, the natural skin color, not wanting to go and tweak and change things, like just letting it be, right? It's very much like sitting out on the grass or sitting out in a field and being able to just enjoy the simplicity of being able to have a picnic and spending time out in nature. You don't need to adjust anything. The Libra placements have a tendency to want to be like, we need the candles, we need the lighting, and the pop of color and the mascara and the this and the that. And so being somebody who, myself, I have a Libra rising, but I have a stellium of planets in the second house, I'm having the South Node move through there right now. So it's been a real reckoning in my life, and this realization that some of the things that I've valued, or some of the things that I've prized, or some of the things that I've prided myself on are probably kind of a little bit out of whack. And the way that I look at what is beautiful or what is necessary in order to be beautiful or attractive or even valuable, it's due for an upgrade. To the point where I have seen it kind of go to one extreme and then the other. And that's just me in my personal life. But I do have Venus conjunct Uranus natally. So, you know, I have this tendency to want to turn everything up on its side. That's just something that I've noticed, especially because Venus is my chart ruler. I think that maybe I'm going to give a little bit of like a better side of this transit, but I feel like a lot of the chaos that I have created, right? Because that can be kind of chaotic, the Venus Uranus. It's very, it reminds me of like the relationship that, oh gosh, what's their name? It's like the, not the Joker. Yeah, the Joker and like Harley Quinn. You know, it's like very like, it's kind of out there. Everything's really crazy and really intense and loud and kind of dangerous, but it's so attractive. It's like a moth to a flame. You can't like look away, you know? So I think that in many ways, some of the more kind of crazy things that I've done of just kind of turning things on its head or disrupting things or shaking things up, it always comes very natural to me, and it happens very suddenly and very quickly. And I noticed that it's in some ways, although disruptive, it can be almost like my superpower, because I noticed that I find myself doing it and getting into the sequence of making changes before other bigger changes come, I guess, if that makes sense. For some people, it can be somebody who has like foresight, right? They have foresight into future fashion trends, future financial trends. It can be also somebody who has a very unique and kind of weird or eclectic sense of taste, style, preferences, things that they collect. My Venus-Uranus conjunction is right on my IC, and it has materialized as a very unique and interesting kind of upbringing. You know, my parents got married and divorced to each other twice, a lot of in and out of two different households, but also coming from a background of people who are just very creative, like artists. You know, I grew up in a home with my father, seeing all of my dad's artwork all over the wall, and also seeing that, you know, my grandmother, his mom, was very much the same way. So there's all of this loud pops of color and all of these natural scenes and all of these things that are all over the house in my family's, you know, homes. And growing up watching, you know, kind of paint flying and things going on has really been, I think, a big part of my life. And it has kind of shown me that sometimes it's okay to kind of be weird and wacky and kind of fly your freak flag. And if you want to put something that you find beautiful or strange or weird or cool out on display in your home, you should do so. So I definitely have a lot of that stuff. You guys can't see it behind me, but I definitely have pretty kind of weird collection of things in my home. Anyways, the darker side of the Venus-Uranus conjunction has also materialized as periods of time where I'm like, that's it, everything's got to go. Everybody out of my house, everything out of my house, everything out of my closet, pulling everything out of the space, shaking everything up, and like really doing a solid kind of clear out. So I have noticed that it can also bring up this sense of just getting extremely frustrated and kind of feeling what's the word, kind of like smothered, or like the walls are closing in. And so some people who have these placements, they do kind of notice a trend of having issues in relationships and not being able to commit, and possibly being in relationships, jumping in, jumping out, jumping in, jumping out, being on or off, or having very unusual kind of romantic relationships with people. In some situations with this placement, lovers can be friends and friends can become lovers. But I think for the most part, traditional astrologers would say, oh, that's kind of like an indication of like a disruption or something that is like a divorce. And so certainly I feel like where that is in my chart, I've had to divorce myself from my past. I've had to divorce myself from certain family members. I've had to divorce myself from, you know, my childhood and my childhood issues and the issues that I have revolving around being in a space where I need a lot of space and I need a lot of freedom. It's interesting because I think growing up with that, I saw a lot of in and out and back and forth and moving around. As an adult into my 20s, it kind of materializes me being like, I can't be in one space all the time. I can live in one city, but I need to be getting out and going places. And so it materializes me just like traveling a lot and redeveloping what it means to be in love with a particular space or place, and redefining what home is in general, Venus, Uranus in the 4th house. But what I realized is that also it brought up these issues revolving around commitment, and that I had a tendency to kind of choose relationships where there was a lot of friction and there was like a lot of not always getting along. So it gave me my own space. So I was almost like using that as a crutch, you know, basically for being able to have a relationship, but not fully signing on and not having to like live with somebody or anything like that. So these placements definitely come with this constant need to like reinvent itself, right? This constant need to redefine what it means to love something, to value something, and where a little bit of organized or orchestrated chaos can sometimes be just what the doctor ordered to liven things up or freshen things up. It can kind of bring this spark. I'm a big believer in love at first sight. I think that it's definitely a thing. I've experienced it a couple times in my life, and I feel like that's something else that people don't always talk about whenever we see this conjunction, that there can be this sense of like, you know, seeing a pair of shoes in a window and just being like, oh, love at first sight. You know, it doesn't have to be people. In this case, it can be pleasures. It can be new tastes and new foods that we're trying. It can be, obviously, yeah, somebody new who we're meeting, depending on where it's falling in your chart. But this need to suddenly rebel and redevelop what it is that tastes good, feels good, smells good. For some of us, it can be kind of breaking out of our routine of wearing, you know, the same, you know, perfume, very much associated with Taurus, especially Venus. Or, you know, buying flowers and putting flowers in the house, or maybe if you're gardening and planting seeds or food or fruit trees or things that you wouldn't usually eat, right? So that can be something else that can kind of come up with this transit as well. Now, I could go on and on about the Venus-Uranus conjunction, but I'm going to move on to the Venus North Node, and I'll just leave it at essentially in so many ways, these sudden changes are going to come on like lightning, right? Venus-Uranus, lightning. And that something happens very quickly. Now, it can bring about stuff relating to money, Taurus, and electricity. So I think of like sudden changes and things going on with power, sudden changes and rises going on with how much we have. The last week has been insane here. We have noticed that even though we're paying for really good internet, we're getting really awesome download speeds, right? But we're having horrible upload speeds, and somehow the upload stuff is being choked. And we've realized like, oh my gosh, like we're not able to kind of do some of the uploads, and we've had some issues with our ability to be able to do live shows. So we're like trying to figure out how to remedy that. But that's very Venus-Uranus. Just pay attention for the friction that can come suddenly. Pay attention for the friction that could give you the opportunity to have the liberation. So if it's the fight that leads to finally having the conversation and being like, look, this is where my values lie, this is what works, this doesn't work for me, that can come about for some people. It can also be this sudden shift and this change in what you're investing in, what you're spending money on, what you deem to be valuable or what have you. Like it's going to come up, and it may feel sudden, and it may feel unexpected, it may feel rushed. And I would just say know that it's not just like, oh, this is new, this feels good, I'm going to do this, because there are repercussions that are going to come down the road, the 18th through the 20th, when Venus squares Saturn. So I think of something like, you know, somebody who rushes out and they want to see a new hairstylist, and, you know, they want to get this, you know, really cool kind of trendy new haircut and color, and they want this crazy thing, and the hairstylist is like, it's going to run you about $500. Are you sure you want to do that? I can do it. I can make it happen. Yes, dye my hair blue. You know, that type of stuff. You end up getting your hair done, you pay for it, 3 days later, you're like, why did I spend so much money on this? I look like the Cookie Monster. You know, like something like that can happen. So there are, on one hand, repercussions for where we are overdoing it. Taurus can be about like hoarding or spending a lot or eating a lot or just bringing in a lot and possessing something, and the effects that has when it comes to the square with Saturn. So it can be like, you know, you spent a ton of money on something, or you made a big investment suddenly, and then, you know, the stock price drops, you know, a couple of days later when we see the square to Saturn. So it's a test in many ways to see if we're willing to liberate ourselves from that in general. And then the Venus conjunct the North Node, which is going to be happening on the 16th. You see this with the little heart. Because the truth is like, us really paying attention to what's going on with Mars and Venus is so incredibly important because of the North and the South Node. This is a video that's going to actually be partnered with the next video that I'm going to do this week on Thursday. That's going to all be about Mars conjunct Chiron. So there's definitely a lot of Venus and Chiron things that are going to be going on in the next week or two, which is really helping us get into alignment with being able to allow masculine and feminine energy to just do what they do best, right? But the thing is that feminine energy right now, it's due for an upgrade. So there is some sense of feminine, people who identify as women or who identify with their feminine energy is suddenly changing. It's transforming and it's needing to upgrade. I think of like Venus Uranus is like the need, especially with the North Node, the need to like upgrade software, upgrade how we are with our money, upgrade how we're investing, how we're spending. And also looking at what applications or what group kind of offers do we have to be able to better manage that? Is it, do you go and bank with a new bank that you kind of resonate more so with? Do you decide to move your money into crypto markets because you feel like you have more freedom? Are you going and talking and sharing information, online with other people, with that North Node Uranus stuff going on about, where you're investing? Are you living in a space where or a state or a city that you can't get certain supplies or certain needs, but can you get it in another place? And are there other people who can send it to you? We're going to see the return of also bartering. I can't give you this, but I can give you that. You're going to see a lot of this with the Venus Uranus stuff. But when Venus touches on the North Node, this is going to be on June the 16th. The North Node in general indicates where we need to learn and where we need to grow. Bottom line, right? It's the direction of where we're going in our life. Well, the South Node shows the shadow qualities of where we've been and what we've developed, but we don't need to continue to keep moving in that direction. So Venus in relation to the North Node, when it's making this transit, it's talking about life lessons revolving around beauty, love, popularity, personal values. So we're really rethinking all of those things and where we're going with some of that stuff in the future. Now, Venus in aspect to the North Node indicates a change in values relating specifically to either beauty or love. Can be money as well. But, specifically because Venus is the planet that rules Taurus, it's going to be about our own, what we love, what we value, what we are wanting to possess or hold on to. For some people, it may materialize with Venus on the North Node as opportunities to attract relationships into our life, new relationships, right? This is coming after the conjunction to Uranus. So new opportunities in love coming. The lesson here is not to fall into our South Node and Scorpio. So we're going more in the direction of love, more in the direction of what is natural, more in the direction of what might be organic or what we can possess personally, rather than fear of what we don't have, South Node and Scorpio. I would say the more that we're working towards the North Node, and when planets are on the North Node, especially the North Node ruler, I think of us kind of getting in alignment with our future, right? With our destiny. And the nodes relate very specifically to the moon. So, the moon has an exaltation in Taurus. So with Venus going through there, it's about emotionally, what do we need to feel secure? What do we need to feel solid, to feel good, right? And while Venus is dancing with the North Node, obviously we realize what values need to change currently to be able to move into the future. The things that we thought were beautiful or the things that we valued in one sense, we realize we may not value anymore, and specifically anything that's not natural, things that are synthetic. That's something that's been coming up for me a lot. Now we have to trust and find beauty in what is natural, what is tangible, and what is real, okay? So it's kind of weird because Venus is going to hit Uranus and we're what if the new hip thing to do is to go more in the direction of what's natural? What if it's not to use the filters? What if it's not to have all the bells and the whistles and the extensions and the this and the that and the spray tans? And this is coming from somebody who has put a real emphasis on some of this stuff for the better part of my life, because I have such a heavy second house stellium, but it's in Scorpio. And the Venus-Uranus, you know, it's for me, it's always been this thing that I'm like, wow, you know, how cool and futuristic is it that you can go and do these new treatments and techniques and things on your skin and on your face or whatever to be able to have like eternal beauty, right? That's something that's really interesting to me. Part of it's my love for vampires, part of it's just probably extreme vanity and just this, you know, not wanting to accept getting older and not really being cool with it to an extent. So I kind of go back and forth. But these transits have been, for me, kind of like emotional whiplash, because I have found that I get so fixated on, no, I got to do this. It's got to look a certain way. It's got to be a certain way. But then I start realizing like, oh, that doesn't feel good. You know, it doesn't feel good to feel like you need to do these certain things in order to be deemed attractive or in order to be deemed valuable or beautiful in some way. So obviously from an aesthetic standpoint, there is this sense of, especially talking about more like feminine energy, wanting to be beautiful. And we're heard, you know, from society like, oh, like, you know, be attractive, but don't be fake. You know, be sexy, but you know, still be a lady, but be modest. You know, be a good mom, but you know, also maintain going to work. These are things that are going on a lot right now for a lot of women, that they're going back and forth between what it means to kind of break with tradition and do something that's new. Whether that's, you know, a job, a career, how they're raising their children, how they are dressing, how they are treating their body, how they're expressing their femininity. It's a lot. There's a lot of that going on right now that feels incredibly overwhelming. And I think for me personally, it's been something I've been kind of marinating on a lot. That's like, wow, like what if the most rebellious thing you can do is just be yourself? What would that look like? You know, how would that feel? What would it mean to hopelessly and gloriously, like, just, you know, be myself? And that's something that I'm like really genuinely, I mean, I feel like I do a pretty good job of that on a day-to-day basis, but more in a sense of how I'm dressing, how I carry myself, how I wear my hair. Do I really feel like I need to wear makeup? I mean, it's things that the Libra aesthetic in me really likes. But the South Node transit through my second house is making me realize, okay, maybe I don't need all these things. Maybe it would be better to just get down to basics and have like a natural raw diet, to not be putting toxics in my body, to not be, you know, drinking wine from time to time, or to not be putting products on my face or using soaps or other things that might be synthetic, and also not feel the need to do anything synthetic to my body. So, big core wound right now for me, something I'm really working on, and may very well materialize as like a very different Candace in the near future. It's kind of the feeling that I'm getting. Who knows? Maybe you guys will see me with a nose ring and dreadlocks in the future. That is possible. I do happen to have my nose pierced. I still wear it. So, oh boy. And then this leads us to Venus and Taurus coming out of the conjunction with the North Node. So we've kind of aligned with like more so the direction and the destiny with where we're going with our own personal aesthetic or new values, then to this sextile. So I like the sextile. The sextile, it may not necessarily be something that's very loud. This is like a very Venus aspect in itself already. But when they sextile each other, Neptune's having a conversation with Venus, and it's basically saying, it's okay to dissolve this stuff. You know, it's okay to like let this stuff go. Now, when Venus is in a sextile in general, it has a very kind of like passionate, romantic, sensual energy. So you want to look at where Pisces is in your chart, and that Neptune softness is lending way actually to Venus, saying like, you know, remember what you were praying for, remember what you were dreaming about, remember what you were envisioning. Some of that Pisces stellium is still kind of hanging around in a sense of that energy, because it's still an aspect to planets and placements in Taurus. This does make for more charming, engaging energy. People who are just feeling like a little bit more social. It can make people feel like there's a little pop with friends or with groups of like-minded people. So the Venus sextile to Neptune, I definitely think is going to kind of open people up and make people like a little bit more friendly, which is very much needed, I think, in the midst of some of these squares that we're still experiencing. And then it's going to move to the Venus and Taurus square Saturn in Aquarius. This will be June 18th through the 20th. This is the hard, it's where you're going to get kind of dinged, right? So I just want everybody to know that actions have consequences, right? And not necessarily actions in a sense of Mars, but Venus. Like the way that we act out, the way that we value things, what we buy, what we do to our bodies, what we eat, what we ingest, like something about that is going to, within a couple of days' time, it's about what, 6 days? Within about 4 to 6 days' time, we're going to feel like that kind of like, like, yeah, but you know, this doesn't feel so great, having made this change or having made this sacrifice, I don't know. Or, oh my God, I get the credit card bill and now I got to pay something back. I spent how much on that purse? Like that's the kind of stuff that can happen. So personally, not a fan of anybody from about the 11th, let's say through, you know, not even that, let's say June 10th. That's why I wanted to get this video out sooner. June 10th through about the 21st, like really rethink any big aesthetic changes, you know, really think the consequences of really saying to a marital partner, I'm not happy anymore, I want a divorce, because it may very well materialize as that. Really think about any big financial investments or transactions that you're making. Just be cautious because there are going to be repercussions. Now, when Venus squares Saturn, it's definitely one of the more difficult transits in general. I mean, I wanted to pull something quite literal because I didn't want to kind of botch it. But when we think of the square, it forces us to act. When we think of Saturn, it definitely has this kind of crystallizing, hardening, kind of more difficult, challenging effect. It can also represent delays or karma. And then Venus is relating. So when we see these in a hard angle to each other, we have issues in these departments. We have issues and delays with money, resources. We have issues with feeling beautiful, feeling attractive, feeling that people are receptive of us. And we can see kind of a coolness that's going to come about in terms of relations. So this is courtesy of Astrology King. It's just very literal. I just wanted to get a very literal description. Venus squares Saturn. So Venus squares Saturn transit can add stress to your love life because of delays, shyness, distance, and other relationship problems. Most of these hindrances will stem from your own fears or criticisms, but you may face the same from others. To maintain harmony in relationships, it would be better to spend time alone, but don't ignore the affections of other people either. Putting the extra effort to reduce the risk of relationship drama. It's common under this influence to feel lonely or depressed. Totally normal for human life. It will quickly pass and get back to normal, harmonious and peaceful existence. Money can be tight with this transit, so avoid a tendency towards wasting money and other resources. Although motivation may be lacking and you prefer to be lazy, this transit requires hard work to maintain a present relationship, career, or other valued parts of your life. It's also not time to be ignoring your responsibilities, especially for loved ones. Although you will be feeling a little low and a need for love, someone close to you may lean on you for support and be greatly disappointed if you let them down. So it's general, right? We don't know. You're going to have to listen to see where it's happening in your natal horoscope. But boy, that flow chart, right, of just the shocking turn of events with the Venus-Uranus, realigning with what we truly do value because of that plot twist that takes place. And for many of us, it's really important. We need that shakeup to really better figure out what our values are, and then having to make the hard course corrections, and Venus having to kind of answer to Saturn because Saturn is saying, you must do this. This is necessary, right? It's a lot. It's a lot for a lot of people, and this is not your typical, conjunction with Venus, because even though Venus has this reputation for being really sweet, when Venus comes into some of these hard conjunctions or squares, she very much is generally not pleased. So I would say be gentle with yourselves, be easy with yourselves. Rose tea can be really helpful throughout this transit. I really like rose spray. I love rose spray both as a toner, and it's just something that I like to spray around my space just to kind of, handle these energies. Working with like Nirvana quartz or rhodochrosite or rose quartz can be really helpful throughout these transits, or anything else. I mean, it doesn't have to be, something that's pink, but something that is very much connected to Taurus as well. I think of like herbs that can help keep us grounded, like patchouli or cedar, obviously rose. These are some of the things that I like to use because they're very earthy. I've been actually like burning also like a lot of like pine recently. That's been something that has been really grounding, kind of having that going in my office while I'm working. So those who will be affected the most by these transits obviously are going to be the fixed signs, because you're going to be experiencing squares. So if you have any placements between 15 and 23 degrees, okay, of the fixed signs, so that's going to be Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius. If you have any personal planets, especially in Taurus, that's within 15 to 23 degrees, pay attention. You are definitely going to be experiencing this pretty intensely. The reason why it's going to affect the fixed signs a little bit more is because you're going to be seeing squares within the angular houses of your chart, especially if you're a fixed rising. That's really what I'm talking about. And when you see these fixed squares happening, it's going to create big changes in all areas of your life. Also, Taurus and Libra placement. So Taurus or Libra, sun, moon, or rising, especially the risings, you guys are going to feel this the most. If you are a Venus-based sign like you guys are, I would say be extra careful during this transit with anything involving transactions or changes to your appearance or any changes in regards to, you know, just your physical body. That's something that you really just want to take it slow. Take it slow this week through those transits. And like I said, it's going to continue because we don't just stop at the Venus square Saturn, although I think the Venus square Saturn can be that turning point that's like, this doesn't feel good. This doesn't taste good. My body doesn't feel good. I'm having issues in this relationship. We're hitting a wall. Like things like that can happen because you need to be aware that Saturn is basically vibrating and saying like, hey, you know what, like, you know, don't lose sight of this, or don't forget that this is still a responsibility. And it's interesting that Venus in Taurus is very much about our own personal feel-good things, and Saturn in Aquarius is like, well, what does everybody else have, right? And so just I have noticed this more as like when I'm going out and I'm doing things, or I'm, you know, going out for lunch, or I'm buying groceries, or I'm going, you know, shopping, or I'm out experiencing Venus things. Like I was out of town this last week. I was buying flowers. I was at the Seattle flower market, walking around, smelling all the flowers and really enjoying that experience. And then, you know, looking up and then seeing all of the people that are on the corner that are begging for food. And there's all these tourists and people walking around and spending money and buying things and eating things and like just really enjoying their life and being in that moment of like what they need to get. But a lot of people were not noticing across the street, people who were just like really, 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 really struggling. Obviously, I know this is taking place everywhere, but that was a perfect example for me to be like, wow, like there's people running around so focused on what they can consume, they're losing sight of other people. And so I think that this, in a sense of like consumerism, is going to be a lot about, okay, are we so hyper-focused on our needs, our resources? Are we losing sight of what other people need? And the fact that if we overly consume, or if we're so fixated on what we have a tendency to overlook what's going on collectively, right? And I think that this is also really important to pay attention to, because we can get so wrapped up in, am I making enough money? Am I saving enough money? Do I have enough of this? Do I have enough of that? That we're also not aware that the squares to Saturn are also orchestrated. These are orchestrated. I have to be careful with what I say. And these, whether it's delays in the supply chain, which is creating like impulse buying and people who are freaking out and buying in bulk, or it's what you're hearing that's coming out of certain, you know, political talking heads that are talking about, you know, shortages or this or that, or what we won't have, or that you better scramble to do this, or, you know, things that are going to be triggering the collective to also have this kind of herd mentality to just freak out and be like, no, it's mine. It reminds me a lot of like the panic, you know, toilet paper buying and stuff that was going on in 2020, where people didn't seem to care whether or not other people had food or had, you know, toilet paper or had the bare essentials, because they were so busy buying pallets of things and bringing it in and holding on to it and hoarding it, right? And so where does the fixation on possession or having things really hinder us from the freedom that we really need to be having, right? So it's kind of ironic that Uranus is in Taurus, which, you know, doesn't do so well in that sign. If you look back in history, we've seen that we really didn't understand what was going on with the earth or science or healthcare throughout history, and that there were lots of kind of poor decisions that were made across the board environmentally and also in regards to medical stuff. Don't take my word for it. Go and look at those time periods. And I think having that square to Saturn in Aquarius, which is really more so talking about what everybody is needing to do or needing to upgrade overall. And Saturn's retrograde now, y'all. So now we're really going to start to kind of see whether or not we've been passing the test. For some people, we're going to feel like things are going to ease up. For other people, we're going to be kind of paying the price karmically for where we have been unwilling to do our Saturn service. So in so many ways, many of us may on the 18th through the 20th hit a roadblock, or we may hit something where we're like, that's it, I can't keep eating the chocolate cake anymore. You know, I like to use that reference because that's definitely for me. Or I just can't keep spending money this way, or I can't keep feeling like my values need to be a certain way if it's not feeling good, you know, in my body, if it's not aligning in my body. There is going to be a need for us to really think long and hard about redefining pleasure and, like I said, getting back down to basics. So for me, because the square is happening, you know, between my 5th house and my 8th house, it's been a lot of me going back and forth being like, you know, do I feel like I'm being creative enough? And do I feel like I'm having fun? And a lot of the things that have been most successful for me throughout this Saturn transit have been things that I did just purely because it was just a labor of love, or it was a project that I was doing just purely for fun. And I didn't really think that being more creative or kind of taking a chance was going to materialize, but I did it anyway, and then it ended up being something. So now it's for me, am I pushing too hard on things creatively? You know, does it feel fun to create certain content? Does it feel fun to keep showing up? And now that there's money tied to it, and now that things are monetized, or now that there is this feeling like I need to keep showing up to bring things in, is that taking away from the creative process? And how much am I, you know, willing to subscribe to this idea that I need to be working all the time in order to afford my lifestyle? And what if my lifestyle just changed and I didn't feel like I had to have all of the things? How much time in my schedule would that free up to just allow me to do the things that I want to do, to allow me to go and wander at a farmer's market, or allow me to be able to spend a whole afternoon painting if that's something that I wanted to do? These are the things that I'm thinking about. And just being somebody who has all of these fixed squares, because Saturn's on my north node. So Saturn's squaring all my planets in the 2nd house, Uranus is opposing it, and there's this huge revolution going on right now where I'm just like, I'm not doing this anymore. And I'm trying really hard to not be like, ah! But that's kind of how I'm feeling on the inside. So I feel like perhaps maybe with this square, for many people, it's going to materialize as being like, that's it. I have to do this part of my chart so much, this Saturn part of my chart so much, that I need to kind of uproot this relationship, uproot these spending habits, sell things, get rid of things. I mean, minimalism is looking pretty damn good for me right now. And that's something that may come up for some people, right? This realization that if you have to cut corners and you have to make sacrifices, why not just do it across the board and simplify your life? Get back to basics. And then last but not least, we're going to see, and this is not going to be until July, but I think that this is where a lot of the release points are going to kind of come about. Once Venus has left Taurus, it's also left that square. It's moved into Gemini, and we'll see a little bit of action. I mean, it's not a big enough transit, I think, for me to really go into too deeply. But sure, when Venus goes into Gemini, Venus is going to come into a sextile with Jupiter. So we might see a little pop there, June 27th through like the 29th, right? We've seen that same that same sextile with Mercury and Jupiter bringing in good news, talking about where we're going, what we're doing. When Venus sextiles Jupiter, it's kind of like, okay, because of the new things that we've started and initiated, you know, we're able to kind of feel differently. And Venus, when it moves into Gemini, it's very changeable in nature. It's much more falling in love with the mind. It's communicating, sharing ideas, and it's having options and having choices, and it does need freedom. But what I'm loving is when Venus comes into the trine with Saturn, and that's going to be happening around July 13th, 2022. Saturn solidifies, right? It gets strong. It's commitment oriented. It's like glue. And I think when we have Venus, that is the ruler of the North Node, in a in a trine with Saturn, we feel like all of the pieces are kind of coming together, and it makes sense why we had to make those difficult changes, but it was to be able to better kind of facilitate some of the things that we are doing then. So it's going to take until about mid-July for us to kind of really figure out what the heck is going on. Ironically, when that trine happens, it's going to be on a full moon. It'll be a full moon in Capricorn. So that is going to be quite an intense full moon, kind of looking at this because of the squares to Chiron and all that stuff. But for the most part, I think that that is going to be, although uncomfortable and us realizing what we're kind of breaking apart from, a lot of solidifying as well, and needing to kind of communicate and share our ideas and be able to kind of look for other versions of love, not just romantic love, platonic love, agape, love of friends, love of travel, love within ourselves. And I think that that's going to be really important as well, that we are all going through this upgrade of our redefining of values together. So that way we can kind of move into this next phase of actually being able to have what the North Node is offering us, which is something that is natural, something that's secure. So hopefully that wasn't too much rambling. I'll probably, if you follow my social media, I'll post this little flow chart as well, so you'll be able to see this later on. I will now get into how this is going to affect each and every one of the 12 signs. So this is going to be... Oh, you know what? Actually, before I do that, before I forget, let me read to you a little bit from the Sabian symbol, because the conjunction specifically is going to be at 16 degrees and change. So I'm going to read 17 degrees from my Sabian symbol book right here. And this is very interesting. Okay, very, very, very interesting. You could read 16, but it's 16 and change. So we're gonna go with 17. Taurus 17, a battle between the swords and the torches. The word is resolution. Competing factors. The symbol speaks to internal conflict between the idea and the practical. The image of a battle between the swords and the torches depicts a battle between spiritual forces and on one hand, and the physical and mental forces on the other. The symbol symbolizes force or compulsion, and torches symbolize enlightenment. The emphasis here is finding ways to reconcile conflicting goals or competing interests that won't require compromising personal integrity. On a practical level, this image can represent a true life dilemma in which an individual is tempted to sacrifice some cherished ideal in order to satisfy a compelling physical urge or desire. Positive, its highest symbol represents highly refined negotiation or mediation skills, exceptional skill in reconciling differences, and a natural gift for helping individuals or groups at odds with each other to understand and appreciate their differences. The inability to act decisively or find peace of mind as a result of inner conflict or confusion. So the accent is on opposition. I have this, but I want that. And do we act impulsively, right? And going back and forth. And I really like that it says, a battle between the swords and the torches depicts a battle between spiritual on one hand and physical and mental on the other. That's definitely going on. There is definitely something at hand that's happening in the world right now where many of us are feeling like we're waking up, and that there is this sense of us feeling more inclined to want to act out impulsively or do something impulsively. But it's challenging because it's battling our mental forces. So it's kind of like your head and your heart being at odds, or your intuition saying this is what has to happen. And your mind is like, how does that happen? How do we make this possible? So because the accent is on opposition, there's a tendency to go to extremes in trying to accomplish goals. The challenge is found in finding the proper means to achieve your ends. Your greatest advantage lies in understanding the motivation behind conflict and reconciling your difference with others. Guard against trying to force things, refusing to cooperate, or finding the middle ground could be costly. Wow. So, it's hard because that Venus-Uranus conjunction, it's definitely going to want that freedom. And I think that for many of us, there's going to be a sense of the practical and logical thing that we should do. And then there is what our body is telling us. There's what our heart is telling us. There's what our spirit is telling us. And I think for a lot of people, it's been, trying to reconcile with having to kind of give something up, right? And although it can be very difficult having to accept certain challenging things in our life right now, like the ending of a relationship or job or a dire financial situation or having to give up an addiction, you know, what the heart cries over, losing, right? The spirit rejoices. And I think this is the one thing, because I can see how Uranus is like the spirit, you know? The spirit can rejoice over what we're willing to kind of part with, and the fact that we really are leaning into more so listening to our higher self. Something else I wanted to touch on also, the archetypal universe. Such pretty words Ren Butler has. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about his description, some themes that we see with Venus-Uranus. So some of the principles of Venus-Uranus aspects: relationship breakthroughs, rebirth of love, friendships, feeling of romantic electricity and excitement, colorful and eccentric sense of style, social sparkle and fun, romantic social restlessness, cravings for sexual freedom, which prevent deeper intimacy, disruptive affairs, triangle situations, sudden attractions without substance, and aesthetic disharmony. So these definitely can be things that happen, you know? A flashy or striking electric beauty, a bright smile, sugar and spice, sudden awakenings to beauty, emancipating beauty, liberation from beauty issues, age cannot with her nor custom stale, an infinite variety. I guess that's Shakespeare. Artistic breakthroughs, artistic epiphanies, romantic electricity and excitement, spontaneous intimacy, love at first sight, attractions of people outside of the usual sphere, yearnings for love, social rebellion, a series of marriages, open marriages. I mean, certainly we can see a lot of that stuff of needing to spice things up in the bedroom, you know, needing something different, or maybe somebody catching your eye that you wouldn't typically be attracted to, but you're like, oh, well, they're different, you know? I definitely have heard from a lot of people over the last week of just being like, I need something different, you know, I need to break it up a little bit. We need to do something a little spicier for date night, or maybe I need to plan some, you know, sudden excursion or something that I'm going to go and do with my significant other that's going to be exhilarating and fun and like out of the box. And so I think that these can be good examples and good ways to kind of use this energy, but certainly there is a shadow side, which is definitely more restless. So the shadow qualities would be a tendency towards manic social restlessness, romantic fickleness and dissatisfaction, relationship tensions, emotional moodiness, attractions outside of a relationship, urges to cheat, steal, disruptive affairs or triangle situations, sudden attractions that cool off, short marriages, excessive need for freedom, a variety of relationships that prevent deeper intimacy, extreme social eccentricity, aesthetic disharmony, awkwardly revealing dress code. Yeah, I could see that. Yeah. And then something else I wanted to kind of factor in, because what's awesome about this book is that he'll give the combinations of the planets, and then if there's another planet that comes into combination or aspect. So this is definitely something that I wanted to talk about. In aspect to Saturn, because we are going to see that it'll conjunct Uranus, and then there's going to be Venus and Uranus by sign in a square to Saturn. So when Saturn is factored in, it's inspiring long-term friendships, relationships, which embody both security and fun, preference for substance over flash in one's social world, the facing of inner pain leading to healing one's relationship life, ongoing relationship tension, conflict between one's needs for intimacy and freedom, complex and challenging triangle situations, alternations between feeling strikingly attractive and glaringly flawed. Interesting. I think the square, it's really reinforcing the fact that's like, this feels good. No, it doesn't. You know, this is working. No, it's not. So it's ironic with the North Node in Taurus, because we are supposed to be figuring out what we personally value. It feels good, but the Saturn in Aquarius is like, yeah, but how does that affect other people? So I think a lot of us are going to have an issue with values in general, and realizing that our values are not always aligning with some of the people that we're in relationship with, right? Interesting to see how it plays out. All right, so let's talk about how it's going to affect each and every one of the 12 signs. Obviously, this is going to be Western whole sign predictions, so listen for your ascendant to see where it's going to happen in your chart. I'm going to tell you where it's happening, what house. I'm also going to tell you which houses Venus rules, because that's important. That's going to be a part of the picture as well. Even though the house that the conjunction is taking place in, we need to take into consideration where Venus is and what Venus rules. And then I'm going to talk to you a little bit about where Uranus rules, or, you know, Aquarius. This is the same place where Saturn is as well. So you can be also aware that the conjunction of Venus and Uranus in Taurus is squaring Saturn in Aquarius. So I'm going to tell you where it's squaring, because they're very entangled in each other. Okay. So we're going to start with Aries and Aries rising. So the Venus-Uranus conjunction is happening in your natal second house. Venus rules your second house of money and resources, your seventh house of relationships, and it's coming into a square with Saturn in Aquarius. Now, it's interesting because Uranus rules, right, the Saturn placement where Saturn is. And the conjunction's happening in your second house. So it can be things like sudden change in finances or food or personal or beauty preferences, sudden financial fluctuations and changes. Usually it can also be about obtaining something in a very unusual way. So because it's kind of this mashup between your 2nd, 7th, and 11th, I get the impression that it can be like an increase in income through other people, or collaborating and working with a group of other people. It can also be, you know, being able to solidify a relationship of sorts, whether it's a romantic or a business relationship, and that's something that's new, that somehow now you're sharing resources, or just feeling like you're more so connected to somebody, which is very different and unusual for you. So keep in mind, like I said, it's happening in your second house. So you're going to see lots of second house fluctuations and value changes. Do I value this relationship? Do I don't? Do I not? Am I still, you know, really tight with this friendship? Am I not? And who or what do I value? What are they bringing to me? What are they giving me? And look for those sudden changes in, like I said, preferences. The card that I got for you is the Six of Cups. So this is talking about reminiscing, going back past times. It can be about you obtaining something that you really value from the past and finally being able to get something. It can also be about you reflecting on simpler times, or when you were a child, or leaning on childhood friends, or leaning on something from the past in order to kind of help you feel more emotionally secure right now. Interesting. So I'm wondering, is this like you really reevaluating long-standing either relationships or friendships and deciding, you know, who's going to stay or who's going to go? It's very possible. This is also a card of reconciliation. So you can be, you know, reconciling a financial issue, reconciling a relationship issue. And this is usually a sign of like being able to come together in sweeter times. Now we've got Taurus and Taurus rising. This is significant for you, Taurus, because it's involving your chart ruler and it's in your sign. Those Taurus risings, let me know how it's going for you. So you've got the Venus-Uranus conjunction taking place in your first house, and Venus rules obviously your chart, your first house of your body, and your sixth house of work, coworkers, and your daily routine. Now, Uranus, or also where Saturn is ruled by your 10th house of career. So this is going to be a little active for you, Taurus. You know, I can see this being suddenly you feeling like you need to make changes with your body, or how you present yourself, wanting to get back down to basics, wanting to change how you're eating, wanting to change how you're dressing. But there can also be this sense of it being in friction with your professional outer image. So it's some sense of like, you know, you saying to yourself, you know, I have to show up for this 9 to 5, but I really want the mohawk, you know, and having some issues with authority figures and being kind of feeling like you're conflicted with wanting to show yourself in a specific way and wanting to be more natural or authentic. And then on the flip side, like not wanting to put on the suit and tie. So we can see these sudden changes with your body style, how you present yourself, new colors, new fabrics, new designs and things like that that are just more unusual for you. Be very careful with any like big changes. You know, there can be some stuff that you can be doing. I think because the sixth house deals with your daily routine and health. It can also be changes in your diet, changes in incorporating working out with another person because you have Libra in the 7th house, and maybe you have the support of a partner or a gym mate, or maybe even a trainer to kind of help you make some of these shifts and changes. If you're wanting to make health or dietary changes, you might seek a new professional. And it also just might mean that you're just switching up your daily routine in general. For the most part, I think it's good for you, though, to be honest. The card that I get is the King of Coins. So to me, it seems like it's because you're wanting to feel like you can either be more functional or that you can get more done. I think it's going to have to do with wellness. So what you're eating, how you're feeling, how your body's feeling. If you're feeling like in tune with that, if you need to be moving around a little bit more, if there is a need to be integrating like new like herbs or supplements. This is a positive card because you are an earth sign. So if you know anything about the tarot, you know that the King of Coins is very grounded. He's practical. He's focused on work and performance. But this is also about maintaining wealth or health of some kind and being able to master something. So it's really great for like being able to get control of a health issue or a schedule issue or anything that you feel like is a little bit out of whack. Okay. Now we have Gemini and Gemini rising. What's going on? Hope you're well. We have got Venus and Uranus meeting in your natal 12th house. Whoa. Venus is the ruler of your 12th and your 5th house, and it is going to be in a square to Saturn, which is in your 9th house. So it's kind of happening in your 12th house, which is behind the scenes, you know, spiritually, psychically hidden, maybe in a foreign place. But it's involving your 5th, 12th, and 9th house lord. So I'm wondering, are you trying to get away and go on vacation? Are you thinking about going and spending time in another place? Is there a sense of you feeling like you need to go be in private so you can feel inspired? Is this an opportunity for inspiration, creative inspiration? Lots of opportunity for love, romance, whether that's traveling with somebody or maybe somebody at a distance. I could see changes with education or children. So if you're wanting to go back to school, if you're wanting to learn something new, a new trait, you could be changing your children's school. And there can also be room for surprise trips. That can be something else. But just literally, Venus-Uranus in the 12th, if it's involving the ruler of your 5th, it's like, do you go away for, a break and take a trip, and then do you meet somebody suddenly? Is there like this sudden whirlwind hidden relationship or romance that happens, things that happen behind closed doors. So there definitely can be a little temptation there, especially if you are partnered into going and doing things that are going to be a little bit more secretive. So I would say be careful of that. The card that I got for you is the Two of Coins. So it's about balancing options, going back and forth. Do I do this? Do I not do this? You might be deciding whether or not it's a good time to invest in a trip, investing in a creative project, weighing your options with investments, really thinking things through before you invest any time or money into something. That makes sense, being that Venus rules your 5th. It can be like, well, do I have the extra cash just to put into this hobby? Do I want to be spending that much on golf clubs or whatever? But this can also be about you weighing options and going back and forth before making a choice. So you might be feeling like you're weighing the options of 2 romantic partners, or whether or not your heart is really in something. And to an extent, you're needing to do this kind of privately or behind the scenes. Now we've got Cancer and Cancer rising. You've got Venus meeting with Uranus in Taurus in your 11th house. So Venus rules your 11th house of friendships and your 4th house of home, private life, and family. It's coming into a square with Saturn, which is in your natal 8th house. And it's also including, your 8th house lord, because Venus is conjunct your 8th house lord. So this is a little bit of a funky one. I would say watch for issues coming up in regards to infidelity. Romance that's among friends, new sexual interests. It can bring new, kind of kinky opportunities, right? Venus and Uranus meeting in your 11th house can mean that there's new opportunities for relationships with people sexually who you're friends with. It can also be making sudden connections with people online. But I think that the friction is more so stemming from the fact that Venus is also ruler of the 4th house, which is private or family. And it's in a square to Saturn in the 8th. So it's like The whole lovers becoming friends thing can become very complicated and toxic if you're trying to befriend somebody who you were in a relationship with in the past, or you had a sexual relationship with. It can cause some friction, especially just with secrets and stuff. There can definitely be some like power struggles going on in regards to relationships with friends, and like trying to make new friends and then other friends getting kind of jealous and kind of weird about it. That's something else that can kind of come up. So just watch for that, just really defining the difference between, being a friend or being in a relationship. That's going to be really important right now, because I think with the square to Saturn, you're going to realize like, no, friends do not do this. I'm not interested in an open relationship. It doesn't make me feel safe. Or there can be secrets that are going on in a current relationship that are kind of being exposed. So be careful of that, Cancer. Card that I get is the Queen of Wands. So the good news is that to me, it seems like there is a sense of like approaching this in a positive way and being like, okay, we're going to create change, right? The Queen of Wands is very passionate. She's very creative. She's very sexual. So I'm wondering the fact that, this is happening in your 11th house, but it's squaring Saturn in the 8th, is like what you do with that sexual energy. If you do feel that need to kind of go and have open relationships, but you're trying to kind of not do that as much, or not just hook up with people, or you're reserving your energy, is what do you do with that creative energy? Where do you put that? What do you put it into? There can be support or help that comes in from a fire sign, so look for Aries or Leos or Sagittarius to kind of be helpful in helping you change or transform this in some way. It can be very active and very fun with a friend. That can be another way that this kind of plays out, but just be mindful of like overdoing it, over-sexing, over-partying, anything like that. So try to keep that passion in check. Now we've got Leo and Leo rising. You've got Venus conjunct Uranus in your 10th house of career. Now Venus rules your 10th house. It also rules your 3rd of communication. And you've got Saturn in the 7th house that you will see a square to eventually. So this is going to be a little bit more active for you, Leo. Hold on to your pants. Oh my gosh. You're going to feel possibly that you're a little bit like at a breaking point. That's kind of the feeling that I'm getting. The good news is that there can be sudden, good, positive changes, good fortune, creative ideas, climbing the ladder at work. Like positive things are happening for you at work. You're getting recognition, you're getting appreciation, and there can be a sense of you like really showing up for your career right now. On the flip side, I would say with the squares to Saturn, it can also be like maybe having an inner office, romance, but not being able to talk about it, and how that affects, everybody involved, or, that it's a little taboo to be involved with somebody in the workspace. It can be feeling like you're doing really well with your career and things are kind of chugging along, but it's you're feeling that resistance or that limitation when it comes to relationships, or maybe you have a partner that's like struggling and not doing as well, and like you're not feeling like they're as supportive of where you're going with your professional kind of career endeavors. Like you may not feel like you have support, or there can be some jealousy with friends or partners or people at work, just because you're really showing up and you're getting a sense of appreciation. So you'll be in the spotlight a little bit more. I would say enjoy it, but also just be very careful around mixing business and pleasure right now, because there can definitely be some real issues where if you meet somebody new at work, or if there's like a professional connection, I think the square to Saturn is going to be this realization that's like, no, we're not friends. We can't engage with each other like that. And you're going to have to kind of draw some defining line. Oops. Oh, the card that I get is the Lovers. So it's going to be hard to deny something, or some kind of passionate situation where you're feeling like you want to proceed forward, or you want to show the world, this is my person, we're in a relationship, and they're like, no, I don't want to go public. There's some limitation coming, and it's going to be hard because you're going to be feeling very passionate and you're going to want to put it out there. On the flip side, for some people, it can be like, hey, I'm single now. I'm open for business. I'm available. It's going to be hard to deny some really strong attractions that are going on for you, whether it's at work or just out in public in general. People might walk right up to you and start talking to you. Somebody might try to pursue you, and you're like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? By the same token, it can also be you feeling much more, passionate, kind of going more so after what you want. So it's going to be hard to kind of tame this. And this can be actually really good for aligning with people who are more on your level as well. So some of like, I've seen clients who have been going, through some of these transits very similar, where it's like they takes that one person that you meet out in the world who really admires you and appreciates you and is really kind to you and really sweet and treats you a way that you may not have been treated in a relationship. Just to have that aha moment that's like, I am good enough, I am beautiful, I am attractive, I am fun. Like, I do like feeling pursued. Why am I in this relationship where I'm not feeling that way? You can have an experience like that that can really kind of shift your perspective in relationships. So watch for that. Now we've got Virgo and Virgo rising. Hope you're doing well. You've got a Venus-Uranus conjunction happening in your 9th house. It's happening in a fellow Earth sign, so it kind of spices things up for Virgos and Capricorns. Your 9th house deals with foreigners, faraway places, travel, higher education, and Venus rules your 2nd house of resources, money, and also your 9th. So being that it's happening in your natal 9th house, I think some of you guys are going to be thinking about, am I going back to school? Do I want to learn something new creatively? Do I invest in travel? Is there a need for me to kind of like learn some new creative techniques or something else? Now, Uranus rules your 6th, and I do think it's very much about skills relating to work and trying to figure out, do I have the money and the resources to invest in this? Is it a good idea? Is it going to play out well? Is it going to work for my schedule? How could I go back to school or take these new courses or do something different if I am going to be, working? There can also be a sense of needing to rearrange your schedule a little bit because of the square to Saturn. It might be like opportunities to take a chance trip, starting a new program, returning to school, new creative skills, or learning new things about health and wellness and fitness. So some of you guys might be interested in becoming coaches or getting certifications for fitness, wellness, nutrition, things like that. But I think that a lot of this kind of comes down to, where am I willing to go or what am I willing to learn to better set myself up so I can feel like I'm more abundant or I'm making more money, and how can I lean on my own personal talents to be able to do this? The card that I get is the Devil. Interesting. Breaking out of old routines, right? This is very much a Saturn card, so I think it is really reiterating, like Saturn in the 6th is like, what can you change about your restrictive schedule, right? How can you kind of let go of some of this rigidity? I know Saturn in the 6th can create health problems. It can also bring up addictions. It can bring delays with job changes and being able to go and do new things. So it can be frustrating, but Saturn is the ruler of your 5th house. So it's really saying to you, what's going to feel good on a day-to-day? How can you incorporate more creativity? How can you incorporate more fun? How can you make more time for your children? How can you make more time for dating? These are things that are really important to think about when it comes to your schedule in general. And to me, it looks like you're breaking down old habits or bad patterns that are hindering you from being able to have freedom in the 9th house. So maybe it is being like, I'm booking the trip. I know that sounds a little irresponsible, but that may actually end up being what ends up happening, or that you're, booking a new course, or maybe that you're going to a city so you can go and do some kind of training. There's something like that might come up. Now we've got Libra and Libra rising. Hope you're doing well. Libra, this is going to affect you similar to Taurus, a little intensely, so be prepared because Venus is your chart ruler. Venus is coming into conjunction with Uranus in your natal 8th house, so whoa. That can be sexy, that can be intense, that can also be transformative. Because Venus rules your 1st house of the body and the 8th house of change, there is a sense of wanting to change and transform your appearance or how you look. You may consider doing this surgically or in a kind of more secretive fashion because the 8th house does deal with that. There can be more of an interest in sexual pleasure, your preferences evolving, more of a potential to sexually kind of experiment or explore more. But I think a lot of this is going to be about psychological changes relating to body image or beauty tendencies. Some of you guys may be dealing with like an inheritance or a bonus, or your partner receiving more money or receiving unexpected income. That can definitely happen with Venus, Uranus in the 8th house. It could be something that comes through another person. So somebody could give you money, you could win something, you could be given like a lottery winning. I don't know, something like that could happen. I would say just be careful because you know, Saturn's in your 5th house, and Saturn can say, be more cautious with investments, be more cautious with your heart and with your love life, be more cautious also when it comes to gambling. So if you end up getting a win or something that comes in, don't gamble it away, right? Don't give it away. This can be about you deciding that you take something and you save it. So that's something else that I would think about. But transformation is big, 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 big on the list for you, Libra, and it's either going to be sexual or it's going to be like psychological as well. Ouch. The card that I get is the Ten of Swords. This to me is about how you respond to endings, letting go, loss, or change. So the Ten of Swords can be painful. It's like being like, okay, I have to say goodbye to this, or I have to kind of let this go. Being that Venus rules the 8th house is like maybe cutting somebody else off because you need to preserve more of your own resources or more of your own physical energy or vitality. So it's cutting off, cutting back. And the Ten of Swords is how you feel and how you respond to something ending. It's uncomfortable, but I have to tell you, with the squares to Saturn in your 5th house, I think it's about preserving your happiness in the long run and not allowing yourself to kind of fall into a pattern of getting stuck into something. So change and transformation is big for you, Libra. For Scorpio and Scorpio rising, this is going to be a Venus-Uranus conjunction in your natal 7th house. So this is an interesting one. Venus rules your 7th of relationships and your 12th of the hidden world and endings of matters. And it is going to be involving a conjunction to Uranus, which rules your 4th. Ironically, it's also going to square Saturn. So be very careful, Scorpio. Similar to Taurus and Leo, there is going to be some real tension going on over the next 2 weeks with this transit. Now, Venus moving through Taurus in your 7th house is great because it's about bringing more love in from someone else. It's about relationships, partnerships, things getting sweeter. But when Venus meets with Uranus, there can be this sense of partnerships getting restless or partners getting restless at home. There can be changes that need to be made in relationships or in the domestic zone. There can be friction between you and a partner over where you live, what is going on in the home. There can be a little bit of strife between family and partnerships. On the flip side, if you're single, if you're looking to meet someone, this can present an opportunity for love at first sight, sudden fated meetings, meeting people who may be at a distance or foreigners. It's possible that you're going to find more pleasure with a partner. So if you're partnered or you're in a relationship, it can be just a really great time to be like, we're getting out of the house, we're going to go and do something fun and different that we don't usually do. It can also be about being more open to the idea of rearranging furniture, you know, moving, selling houses, changing houses, things like that. Because you're going to see in the weeks ahead, Venus will come into a square with Saturn, and it's going to be, you know, them being like, yeah, maybe I don't want to stay here, or I don't like the way the drapes look in the living room, you know, that kind of stuff. So be really careful with either partnering with a person and making decisions about where you're living or making big aesthetic changes in the home. You might paint something a color that you realize you don't like, or you end up paying a lot of money for a piece of furniture and your spouse likes it but you hate it. Like, just wait until after this transit's over. Be careful with dealings involving real estate, buying and selling or renting places, because you might find that it doesn't make your partner happy what you end up buying. But I think for a lot of you guys, it's going to be clearing out old patterns in relationships. And you want to be mindful, Scorpio rising, that if there's any funny business going on in relationships, it has the potential to be kind of aired out because Venus rules your 12th house. So if there's something that's being hidden that they're doing that they're not talking about, if there's something that's like bothering them, it's likely to kind of get aired out with this transit. So there can definitely be makeups, breakups, things like that going on for you guys. The card that I get is the Seven of Swords. Oh, man. So, you know, sometimes when we see Venus Uranus, we find out that there's just something not working in a relationship, or that something's not right? Somebody's not being honest with themselves, or they're not being honest with you. This is not limited purely to just romantic partners, okay? This can be like a he said, she said situation between family and a person you're dating. This can be a he said, she said situation between family or friends. Like, it's not limited to just a romantic partner. So I know these are general, but the Seven of Swords is like something's not right here, something's being withheld, somebody's not telling you something, there's something going on that is either not genuine or not honest. So it's like watching out for issues with infidelity or watching out with issues with people aren't being completely forthcoming about either their intentions or their behavior or what they're doing behind the scenes. If it's you, Scorpio, then you need to realize that some of these things might come to light, and there is a need to be really honest and forthcoming. If a relationship's not working, then it's just not working. All right, we've got Sag and Sag rising. Venus and Uranus are meeting in your 6th house, which deals with health, wellness, pets, daily routine, coworkers, that kind of stuff. Venus obviously rules your 6th house. It also rules your 11th. And it's coming into a conjunction with Uranus, which is the ruler of your 3rd house. It will also square Saturn, which is in your 3rd house. So it's weird, you know, the area of your life is going to be your schedule and your daily routine, and you might get frustrated with a health problem, you might get frustrated with a delay in your schedule. There can be a sense of you feeling like, okay, I need help from friends. Friends might jump in and save the day. That's the good news. If you're willing to reach out and ask for help, if you're willing to put in a phone call, send a text message and be like, hey, can you help me with moving? Can you help me watch my animals? Can you help, you know, come and take care of my place while I'm away? If you're needing to, you know, get some assistance or maybe even like a recommendation, you might have friends that can give you a recommendation for health, wellness, fitness people, professional organizers, things like that. A lot of Sag risings have been moving. So, you know, maybe you're getting help with friends moving, but maybe there is an injury in the midst of a move, and you have to deal with that. There can also be a sense of just like scheduling difficulties and like miscommunications. Watch for issues also involving vehicles, but for the most part, I think Venus coming in, it's saying like you're going to receive some kind of blessing or some kind of assistance from a friend throughout some of these issues. So if you're experiencing changes in your schedule, changes in your diet, whatever, you want a new way to move your body, you want a new health or fitness routine, this is definitely something that I think is going to be coming in for you. And the card that I get is the Empress. So that's a wonderful card. It's about kind of getting back on track. It's about, you know, feeling like you're healthy, you're doing well, feeling grounded, being able to nurture and take better care of yourself. A lot of this can be about positive self-talk, needing to have more positive self-talk because it's involving a square to Saturn. And just reworking your mindset about what is possible and not feeling like you have to do everything at one time, okay? So help can come from female figures, mother figures. It can also be about you dealing with reproductive stuff or dealing with feminine health or anything in relation to that. We've got Capricorn and Cap rising. Hope you're doing well. We've got a Venus-Uranus conjunction taking place for you in your 5th house. This is interesting because Venus rules your 5th house of lovers, creativity, children, and romance, and also your 10th house of career and responsibility. Now it's coming into a conjunction also with Uranus in Taurus, and it will square Saturn in the 2nd. So Cap and Cap rising, expenses relating to children is kind of the feeling that I'm getting, or expenses relating to creative projects or being self-employed, having to spend money to make money. This can also be bringing up themes of like falling in love with something. It can be a hobby, it can be a piece of art, it can be falling in love with a new, young, fun person, someone who's kind of different than what you would usually date. It can be about unexpected pregnancy, falling in love with a child, maybe having a new baby, new exciting hobbies and pastimes, and just having a good time, which is, I think, something that's like really needed by Capricorn right now. I think it's going to show you that you can go and have a good time with somebody. You can go and maybe even, you know, spend a little money. Don't go ham though, because Saturn in your 2nd house is saying like if you're going out and going to bars and having a good time or buying a lot of supplies for a new project or putting a lot of money into your business, you're going to feel the effects of about a week later, like, oh my gosh, I spent so much money on that. So it's just being mindful of like how much money is going out in order to have a good time. And I think it's like redefining what it means to have a good time and finding that you can have fun in a way that's like a lot more simple. You don't have to go and have all the bells and whistles and go on the fancy, you know, dinner and a movie and, you know, like the several course meal. It's like, okay, pack a lunch, like go out and hang out with somebody out in nature, go for a hike, or, you know, take your kids to the park. You don't have to take them to Disneyland. It's finding new and unusual ways to be creative and have fun without breaking the bank, right? But I think it's about falling in love, to be honest with you. The card that I get is the Ace of Cups. So there could be an I love you and I love this that's coming up for you. A new relationship that's developing, really feeling like your cup is runneth over and that your heart is full and ready for new love and new experiences. And I really feel like this is going to be a great time for you emotionally. I think it's going to really benefit you, Capricorn. And I think it's about really allowing yourself to just have the freedom to express yourself better. Now we've got Aquarius and Aquarius rising. What's going on? I hope you're well. This is an important transit because it is affecting you. It is going to be in conjunction to your chart ruler, Uranus. This is a Venus-Uranus conjunction happening in your 4th house. So similar to the other fixed signs, this is active because it's going to happen in an angular house. So with this Venus-Uranus conjunction, the 4th, it can be some kind of like personal freedom and like rebellion that's going on within your home. Maybe you're moving away, maybe somebody's moving in with you. There's some huge shift that's happening where you're being given either more independence or you're kind of going your own way. Now, Venus rules your 4th house of home and your 9th house of faraway places. So I'm wondering, are you moving far away? Is family moving far away? Is there some sense of you thinking about picking up and relocating? Now, you're also going to see a square that's going to happen about a week later to Saturn in your sign. So there is this sense of being like, I need freedom, I need my own space. And then you move and then you're like, oh, I miss my friends and my family. That kind of thing can happen. So it's kind of bittersweet for you. There can also be this sense of like liberating yourself from the past and no longer feeling like you have to live in the past or that you're having to live somewhere that you have always lived. Maybe you're more open to like moving out of a family's home or moving out of your hometown and exploring other places. So I see like new opportunities for living spaces or decoration. So it can be like, we're getting rid of all this old furniture, even though it's been in the family forever. Let's do something new. Let's knock down walls. Let's renovate. That can be another thing that can kind of come up. Putting a personal touch on your home, bright colors, maybe even new gardening or landscaping, or like looking at places where you can do that and be more interested in like communal growing. Maybe starting a community garden could be something that you could do as well. So that might be a good idea. And I also feel like it's about reworking your idea of home or family in general. The card that I get is 10 of Coins. This is a very positive card. So it's talking about long-term financial planning or investments to like leave like a legacy, right? So it's like family money, or you starting a business or investing in something that's going to help the family long-term, making long-term investments or goals that's going to be looking out for everyone. I've known a couple Aquarius risings that are like, okay, I'm trying to move money around so I can like make sure I'm leaving, more money to my kids or my grandkids, or people who are thinking about buying land so they can develop land so everybody can live on the same space. A lot of community things have been coming up, but while at the same time feeling that responsibility of having to be the person who orchestrates it. So I could see that actually with the 10 of Coins, but this is positive investments, long-term financial planning, especially when it comes to home or family business playing out and things that are going to turn out to be very valuable. So what you're buying, what you're investing in, the decisions that you're making, a lot of responsibility, but a big payoff. And last but not least, we have Pisces and Pisces rising. And this is a Venus-Uranus conjunction taking place in your 3rd house. So it's all going to be about communication, writing, short distance trips, but sudden, right? Because Uranus is sudden. So Venus rules your 3rd house and also your 8th. And it is coming in conjunction with Uranus, which rules your 12th. So there's two ways that I can look at this. Sudden epiphanies and inspiration that just strike out of the blue. I would say a word of advice, keep a notebook on you or something where you can jot down some of your ideas or some thoughts as they pop in. You may feel very inspired to write, to start a new blog, a website, to be active on social media, to be sharing things with people and telling people what you're learning. There might be like a new program that you're learning. Also, that might be interesting. Great time to learn tarot or astrology, or to be listening to podcasts or anything, like be buying a deck of cards, because the 3rd house can be talking about that. But I also feel like on the flip side, it can be sudden, unexpected, jarring conversations or news revolving around a neighbor or revolving around a family member, like a sibling. So especially if they're having health problems or mental health issues, this can be something that comes up out of the blue and you receive a phone call or an email, out of nowhere that's like, hey, so-and-so is having a difficult time, or you need to be the one to call and be like, hey, can you check on my neighbor? That can be something else that can come up for you as well. Being that Venus is in the mix, I would also say to you that if you're somebody who is single, online dating can be something that you can do. You might suddenly, unexpectedly meet someone. Interesting. I also get the Lovers card for you, so very cool. So this can be maybe somebody like leaves you a love note, or somebody reaches out that you didn't know how to crush on you. This can be feeling like very romantic in your communication style, wanting to like write about romance, or feeling like you need to send somebody a letter and tell them how you're feeling. But this can be out of the blue connections that you're having that's very intense, very spiritual, and people that you're feeling very drawn to. And this is definitely more romantic. So I think that's cool. I mean, you know, we are going to see the sextile between Venus and Neptune. So maybe you're kind of feeling like, oh, I think I'm going to meet somebody. And you do some kind of work revolving around manifestation and calling somebody in who's like a vibrational match, and then you meet them. So looks like you're aligning with somebody pretty soon. Very exciting, guys. Hopefully this is helpful. I don't believe I'm going to get into Saturn and Venus square, or Venus on the North Node. This is meant to be like an all kind of encapsulating video that's going to talk about all of this. So just, you know, to kind of close this out and kind of encapsulate everything, the changes that we're making, the sudden rebellions against what we have always done, or what we have always loved, or what we have always felt, the freedom that we're getting from uprooting some of this stuff in the long term is going to be quite positive. So it's really important to pay attention to what your body is telling you, what feels good, what comes natural, what is a little bit easier, or just more authentic or organic. So it's about making more simple decisions and kind of getting in alignment with getting back to basics. If you can do that, although it's uncomfortable and it's different, you will find that within about a month's time, you'll be glad that you made these changes, and that you kind of really upgraded what your value system is in your life, and you will be finding that I think things are going to flow a little bit better. So let me know, where is this happening for you? Where is it taking place in your chart? Especially those Taurus and Libra placements. How are you guys doing? What shocking changes have kind of gone on for you? And what are you anticipating from this transit? If you have your natal Venus conjunct Uranus, tell me about it. I want to hear about it. We probably have some similar crazy stories. But by the same token, I think that there is something really good that's going on that's going to allow all of us the opportunity to get on a different track and to be experiencing a variation of different types of love. So let me know. I'll be back on Thursday. I'm going to talk to you guys all about Chiron conjunct Mars in Aries. So this is more my Venus talk. Then we're going to have our Mars talk on Thursday. I will see all of you guys very soon. Take care and enjoy the rest of your week.